Pokemon rumors, let's take a look at them right after the bet, which is going to be starting off with this post right here from Maki and J Roses from PokeOS. Definitely check them out. They're saying that we have some Poketopia leaks and spoilers, a dev status from 2023. According to the leaked 2023 dev documents, apparently Poketopia was planned to include the following, which is 400 to 600 recipes. 80 of them were implemented at that time, as well as 50 to 70 blueprints, 10 are done, approximately 100 treasure chests, 20 were placed at that point, one dungeon per area, multiple puzzles per area. Now, these were in works in progress targets. It may have changed or been scrapped. Once the game is out, we'll break down what actually made it in. And apparently, they did have multiple post-launch regions. Now, keep in mind, the region we're in this game is going to literally be a past version of Kanto. Like, that's literally what we're exploring in this case, right? It's like an actual Kanto set in the past. So it would only make sense then, right, that if they wanted to include more regions or locations, we get to see, sorry, not in the past, in the future. It's like a future post-apocalyptic Kanto. So you would expect us to see a post-apocalyptic future like, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, potentially, stuff like that. Whatever they're allowed to do. I don't think they're explicitly allowed to maybe necessarily keep saying stuff, like say stuff like that. I mean, it's clearly an alternative universe version of the Pokemon world, so it is what it is. But it is kind of funny, though, just in general. And I do wonder what this game is going to function like, if there's actually going to be a plot or a story in the game, or if it's just one of those games where you just play through it, right? And that's like the entire experience, the entire plot in its entirety. I'm very curious to know about that, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, though, it's still interesting. It's very curious. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on it, of course, in the comment section down below. Definitely let me know what you guys think about it. But other than that, we can move on to the next thing, which is going to be, I guess in this case, there is a rumor about, I think it was Gen 10, but it's rather to do with like Pokemon Day, I think. So here it is. So this one is saying that we're going to get an Eras collection. So releasing, Pokemon collection, Eras collection by Anonymous. This is posted on today, February the 2nd. Releasing June is a collection of classic games on the Nintendo Switch 1 and Nintendo Switch 2 as a bundled digital collection. Physical releases later in the year. It's called Pokemon Eras Collection. It's a mainline Game Boy game in one package. Okay, so it's just a single game with a bunch of stuff in it. That would actually be really cool. I'm not going to lie. But we've been hearing about a collection game now for, oh man, I shit you not. It's been like 7 years of this, probably 6-7 years. Oh no, I did not do that intentionally. Okay, but it's been around, I want to say around 6 or so years now. Aside from revisiting these beloved games, the main draw is a new event in these games, unreleased ones. Game Freak discusses how its intent was to revisit the games that started it all and deliver a definitive version for the fans. Gold, Silver, Crystal get the Celebi event that was in the Virtual Console Crystal. Fire Red Leaf Green get the Naval Rock and Birth Island events, that would actually be sick, available after beating the game. The Sevi Islands get a new content as well, focused around Silver. Again, I would love that. Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald get the Faraway Island event and a new way to encounter Jirachi via the White Rock at the space station. Which, honestly, all of this sounds kind of great. But again, I just don't see them doing a collection of games into one package that you can pay one price for. They would much rather like package at like it in such a way that they would make more money, like package red, blue, and green, or red, blue, and yellow maybe, together, and call that a quote unquote like collection and sell that to you, and then maybe, or actually sell them all individually again. That's what they did, I think, back for the Virtual Consoles for gold, silver, crystal, Ruby, red, blue, and yellow. I think green got a Virtual Console in Japan as well. But like, that was all individual games. And I think they prefer it that way because it's more money, okay? It's more money across the board if you have to make people buy like the same game twice or all those games individually. Like if you sold every game for like a $35, which I think is a terrible price, $35 for games that came out in like 1996, 1998 and stuff when I was born, freaking hell, is ridiculous, right? Like selling Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald, even selling them now for a higher price. A game that, keep in mind, these games have already been out. They don't you know, they're old games. They shouldn't be charging these massive prices for them because it's a finished product from a long time ago. Trying to just capitalize on that would be ridiculous. The only thing you should do is, hey, people love these games. There is not really ways for the younger generation to play a lot of these old games because, let's be honest, unless you want to buy fake versions from like sketchy vendors at like a convention, which is probably the only case you really have, otherwise you got to pay a shit ton of money because people just want ludicrous prices for these games now. Or you just gotta play them on, you know, like with the ROMs that you download from the internet on emulators. But if you want to get like people that necessarily don't understand that, or you know, don't understand how emulators works or how ROMs work, of course you and me understand them because we spend all our time sitting online. But the average person isn't going to be sitting and, you know, buying these games off of, you know, like they're not gonna be like they're gonna be not really willing to invest in ROM hacks, right? Their time, their whatever, the same way we will, right? But they are willing to invest some money directly into something like Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, Yellow, all in the package on the Nintendo Switch 1 or Nintendo Switch 2. Very willing. I'm pretty sure most people will be willing to do that, especially because it carries the Pokemon name. And by proxy, it becomes more valuable. Shit, if you want to make a lot of money, here's a suggestion, Nintendo, Game Freak, and Pokemon Company, and Creatures Inc. You could literally take all these old games, right? Make individual collections for each generation. So a Gen 1 Kanto collection, a Gen 2 Johto collection, and a Gen 3 Hoenn collection. You make a collection of all three of those. And you know what you do with that? You literally make it limited time only available in a physical release with an actual cartridge. You do that and you're going to make people rush to buy that for a limited time because it becomes a novelty item that is valuable over time. Because as you know, most things nowadays, everything is about how much value can you get out of something instead of like actually enjoying the things you have in life. It's all about how can you make much cash from it, which means scalpers would abuse it. But I'm talking about purely from a business perspective. That is a valuable thing for them to do if you want to make full cash on all of that. Just saying. But it is what it is. He also points out that none of these Pokemon that he listed here, so, you know, having, in this case, Jirachi showing up for the faraway island or whatever, or actually the White Rocket space station, you know, but basically all the events, they would essentially be non-shiny locked, so that would be good. Lastly, Red, Blue, and Yellow are not left out of this. I don't know the full story, but I heard when making home capabilities for these, Red and Blue gave them issues. The glitches with the data, like the Missing No one, was breaking things. So, while not the original plan, they managed to fix this by incorporating Missing No fully into the... See, that's where you lose me. That's where you completely lose me. It's listed as 000 in the Dex. It's transferable to home and has a redesign and a slightly name changed. It's called... I'm not even going to read that. And its design resembles the ghost form, but all static with more of a body. When transferred to the winds and waves, it will be able to change form. It rotates via redesigns of forms. It could be encountered as in Red and Blue. Its stats change depending on the form it takes. Like Mew, it gets access to every move. Aside from that, only winds and waves info I've heard is that the beta Pokemon from Red and Blue made the cut to bring celebrations full circle. That's it for now. This entire post just got invalidated by this absolute travesty that they wrote right here. This is terrible. This is not happening. Why would they do that? I mean, we have already the ghost model of like, you know, like the weird ghost model already exists in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. What? Why would that be Missing No? Missing No is literally just a missing number because it was literally an error, right? There's an error when programmed. Why would they bring an error back? And it's arguing that it's because, oh, they did not know how to port it is ridiculous. They ported it to the Virtual Console on the 3DS. What do you mean? This makes no sense. I'm sorry. It seems a little ridiculous. I mean, for crying out loud, like, it should not be impossible for a company with, you know, such a size to not be able to do that. So it is what it is. Sorry, I don't think personally we're going to get a collection because we've been waiting for such a long time, and there's just nothing that would indicate them doing it. I mean, maybe potentially this time it could happen, but there's nothing necessarily besides maybe one thing, which is the last time we got any form of, or actually the first time we ever got any form of a collection was on the big 20th anniversary in, guess what, 2016, which is exactly 10 years ago. And the 20th anniversary was the big one, right? Because then when they do these anniversaries, the big ones are the every 10 years or so, right? That's when they do the big like Pokemon TCG collections, which is what they did, the big one back in 2016. That was a massive one. I remember that was huge when they did the celebrations and all that. And, and they were releasing the virtual consoles, and they announced, a new generation with Sun and Moon. That was a big time, big deal. So the only thing that even gives me an inkling of hope that we're going to get a collection of some sort, but the thing is, I don't think it's a collection. It would just maybe be the individual games on their own being resold back to you. They could do a Super Mario Galaxy type thing where it's like a 2-pack, and then they're going to charge you like 45 to 60 bucks for it. They could do that. Wouldn't stop them. Nintendo are greedy after all. And I know when I say Nintendo, you might be like, yeah, but Game Freak makes the games. Yes, but when it comes to all of this, whether it's distribution and all this sort of stuff, publishing, Nintendo are the ones publishing, and more times than not, probably more involved with the pricing, I think, than Game Freak would be. Game Freak makes the games. They all make decisions combined. And I think they all have to agree on something like that, like pricing, but I'm pretty sure Nintendo has a little bit more influence on that side of things because they are the publisher after all, right? Unless, of course, as publisher, they give the leeway, which I kind of doubt, but that's just me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm just insane. But like I said, that just do be me. Maybe I'm just yapping. I don't know. So I'm going to leave that one there and move on to the next rumor, which, to be honest, this one is different. So this one is shorter, and it says Wind and Wave Game by Anonymous. Welcome to the Wind and Wave Game. In this image, there are 3 shots from this month's reveal trailer. Each level of the game you win, the less intense the pixelation gets. Level 1 is your starting point. And again, I mean, this is just ridiculous. It could just be random AI generated images of something. Like it's ridiculous. Now, people down here are just mocking this, so I'm not really going to get into it. If you guys have any idea what this is, it would be so funny if this image actually ends up being a real leak in the end. It would be kind of funny, but it's just a pixelated image, so I wouldn't really take this to heart. I think it's just a goofy gaffy thing, so I'm just going to leave that one at that and move on to the next subject, which is, in this case, going to be this right here. Now, a new update trademark filing for Splatoon Raiders has surfaced with a release date of February 17th. This could hint at the Nintendo Direct on that day, or there might be a new info about the game via the Nintendo Today app. So there is a chance, and I'm only bringing this up, this whole post, because we don't really talk about Splatoon. I'm not really a Splatoon player, but again, if you love it, that's fine. However, I am bringing this up because this could again be an indication that we would be getting that Nintendo Direct this week. Because if you announce a Nintendo Direct for this week, you have the Nintendo Direct this week, and then you move on into next week where you literally get a release time for this Splatoon Raiders game. That would actually be honestly perfect. Like, the timing would be perfect, the placement of the timing would be perfect, like everything sort of would align, well, perfectly. There's no other way to put it. I really mean it. There's no other way to actually say it. So, I don't know, man. I'm very curious if this is going to have actually any value, anything's going to come out of it. It's all a matter of time at this point, right? We are on Monday now. I mean, maybe you're watching this on a Tuesday. It doesn't really matter. The main point is that we are very much at the sort of precipice of an actual, new trailer coming out or a new direct or anything in that shape or form happening. Why am I saying this? Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time. We haven't had any new Nintendo Direct in a long time. I think September was the last one, if I'm not mistaken. We don't really have any games that we know of. There's no games that we can, look at and be like, hey, we have, this game coming out. We got that game coming out. There's none of that. We don't have any major titles that have been announced. I mean, Pokemon, we know there's going to be a Generation 10 this year. We know that. That's just not even a question. We don't have to think about it. But again, that hasn't been officially announced. That needs to still be announced. Also, we don't have a new Mario game, I think, being announced. We have nothing like that. We don't have a new Zelda game. We don't have anything really massive. I mean, I guess we do have Splatoon Raiders. I guess that's that. But, like, other than that, what do we have to really look forward to? Besides Tomodachi Life, which I think just got its own, like, little presentation or is about to get one. Officially, that was announced, I think. Besides that, what do we really have? I don't really think there's much to look forward to, so we need a Nintendo Direct to sort of announce something, to at least give people a reason to go out and buy stuff, to buy the Switch too. Because another thing we're also wondering about is the sales numbers, because very soon, I think actually this or next week, we should be getting the investors call, right? There's going to be an investors meeting where they're going to reveal their quarterly, earnings, sales, everything along those lines is going to be updated. So the sales of Pokemon games, which means we're going to actually finally get to see how much did Legends ZA sell in total, because a lot of the stuff that I've heard seems, again, based on what I've just been reading a little bit here and there, it's a mixed bag of stuff, right? But the little bit that I've been hearing is implying that ZA did not sell good after the first like week or two of sales, that the sales sort of plummeted very, very fast, and that a large amount of the sales of that game were like half of them were on the Switch 2, which you have to understand. You have to think about that, okay? There are almost 150 million people who have a Switch 1. And out of those 150 million people, if there was 5 million sales of this game when we got that information about half of them being on Switch 2, that means that only 2.5 million people, give or take, bought this game on the Switch 1. Ladies and gentlemen, if you compare that to Legends Arceus, I don't know, anything like any Pokemon game, whether it's Arceus, Scarlet Violet, could be Sword and Shield, doesn't matter. All those games sold substantially more. 15 million sales for Arceus, right? About 30 million sales or so for Scarlet and Violet, about the same amount of sales, like 28, 29 million for Sword and Shield, which I know Sword and Shield and, Scarlet and Violet are, new generations. They're larger, they're bigger, they're more encapsulating, right? They're much larger in scale, which is fine, but still, it doesn't change the fact that when those games came out, when Legends Arceus came out, less people had a Switch at that point in time. That was, generally speaking, like 3 to 4 years ago, right? 3 or 4 years ago is when those games came out, when there was less people with Switches, less people to buy these games, and even still, they sold those numbers, between 15 to 30 million sales. So if this game hasn't sold equally as well within now a pretty long time, right? This game has been out since October, if I'm not mistaken. So you've had October, November, December, all of January, and now we're in February. So you've had essentially 4 months almost, 3.5 if we want to be like generous, but give or take 4 months in total. In that time, at least initially, they had sold 5 million, which meant that initially they sold even better than Arceus. But there hasn't been any news. Like, initially they were hyping it up. They were announcing that the game was selling so well, and there's all this data coming out, and then suddenly it stopped. And again, if you think about it, those 5 million sales, why weren't all 5 million from like the Switch 1? Wouldn't 5 million people on Switch 1 have bought it, and then the other half would have bought it on Switch 2? Again, that's ridiculous for me to say, because maybe you're somebody like myself who, for example, I have the game on both Switch 1 and Switch 2, but like maybe you're someone who has the Switch 2, now, and you're like, hey, I'm not going to buy it on the Switch 1 if I already have a Switch 2, which is fair, but the Switch 2 install base is smaller to begin with. So and most of those people probably bought the game because they have nothing else to play on the Switch 2. So it would be great to have like, hey, I have a new game. Technically, it's a Switch 1 game as well, but at least it runs better, and I have this console for a reason, so I might as well use it. But it's really curious that those other 148 million people just never went through the efforts of actually purchasing this game, potentially. Again, I really do want to see the sales numbers, so we're gonna have to wait for that. But yeah, that's it pretty much for today's video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. Make sure you drop a like down below, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you all in the next video.